Welcome back to Fulgur channel, and today we're delving into the high-stakes standoff between two global giants, the United States and China. The South China Sea has become a hotspot for geopolitical tensions, and recent events at Scarborough Shoal have brought the world's attention to this flashpoint. But before we get into the details, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update on global affairs. Scarborough Shoal, also known as Panatag Shoal in the Philippines and Huanjian Island in China, is a tiny coral reef in the South China Sea. Its strategic location has made it a point of contention between multiple nations, including the Philippines and China. Tensions began to escalate when reports emerged of Chinese vessels swarming the area, preventing Filipino fishermen from accessing traditional fishing grounds. The Philippines, backed by the United States, accused China of aggressive territorial expansion in the South China Sea, which Beijing vehemently denied. As the situation escalated, the U.S. took a strong stance, deploying naval assets to the region in a show of support for its ally, the Philippines. The Philippine Coast Guard was given the order by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to remove a floating barrier installed by the Chinese Coast Guard in the southeastern area of the Scarborough Shoal, also known as Bajo. This was later deemed a special operation. It was revealed that the CCG installed the barrier on September 20, amid monitoring Filipino fishermen in the area. The operation was just the latest of many incidents involving the maritime dispute between China and the Philippines, centering of late on the sovereignty of this shoal in the South China Sea. China has claimed that it has sovereignty, using the controversial 9-dash line as its legal justification. The actions of the PCG in removing the barrier, despite Chinese claims that the Philippines is violating supposed territorial waters, is in keeping with enforcing de jure Philippine sovereignty, since the shoal in question is located within the 200 nautical mile zone set out under the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. The move by the Philippine government can be viewed as pushback against China's gray zone tactics in the South China Sea, and the likely hope is that it will dissuade similar actions by Beijing elsewhere in Southeast Asia. The dispute on the Scarborough Shoal between China and the Philippines has its roots in 1995, when structures on stilts were first reported being built on Mischief Reef. This was followed by more structures elsewhere. Formal protests from Manila were disregarded by Beijing. In 2012, a standoff took place at Scarborough Shoal between PCG and CCG vessels, alongside vessels from the Philippine Navy and Chinese Navy. Despite a mediated attempt by the United States to settle the dispute and for vessels from both countries to leave the area, China refused to leave the shoal and subsequently began efforts to militarize it. This was followed by increasing presence of CCG and CN vessels alongside vessels used by the People's Armed Forces Maritime Militia. The Philippines eventually brought the issue to the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague in the Netherlands in January 2013. By July 2016, the ruling favored their claims over China's. Manila has called the laying of the barrier an affront to its sovereignty. As of September 2023, 25 countries have called for the PCA ruling to be respected, while 18 countries have issued statements that positively acknowledge the ruling. 5 such countries that have acknowledged the ruling are from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, consisting of Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, and Vietnam. However, China has refused to recognize the ruling and continues its aggressive actions in the South China Sea. The Philippines has sent fresh supplies to its decrepit outpost in the South China Sea, despite a Chinese blockade. The mission to Second Thomas Shoal came as long-running tensions flared up after Manila's Coast Guard cut China's barriers in disputed waters. The BBC witnessed how Chinese vessels maneuvered against the Filipino ships, but 2 got through the blockade despite a near miss. It was a ringside seat to a cat-and-mouse chase that has been escalating. Manila resupplies its outpost in Second Thomas Shoal, a rundown Navy ship with a handful of troops. every month to reinforce its economic rights to waters that are both rich in fish and mineral resources and also strategically located south of Taiwan. China claims almost the entire South China Sea and Taiwan, a self-governing island which it regards as a renegade province. Its claims to the sea overlap with those of the Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, and Taiwan. President Xi Jinping's timelines for military modernization are very different from timelines for aggression, the Pentagon's senior official for Indo-Pacific Security said Thursday. Eli Ratner, speaking at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said, nonetheless, China's leadership increasingly is turning to the People's Liberation Army as an instrument of coercion in the Taiwan Strait and the East and South China Seas, is now in the forefront to achieve China's revisionist objectives. In addition, Ratner said China's unprecedented pace of modernization of its conventional and nuclear forces is proceeding without transparency and extending into cyber and space. He repeatedly said, military-to-military communications are not where we want them to be. Fits and starts are not substitutes for open lines of communications available to diffuse a crisis from escalating to conflict. We don't have the habit of communication. He said the next congressionally required China military report will spell out the Pentagon's clear-eyed appraisal about the PLA's capabilities and how the United States and its allies will rise to the challenge. Conflict is neither imminent nor inevitable, he said. In recent months, tensions have been especially high between China and the Philippines, which recently strengthened military ties with the U.S., Beijing's chief rival for influence in the region. The Chinese Coast Guard condemned the latest resupply mission, saying the Filipinos entered what it calls the Nansha Islands without its permission. The Philippines calls it Ayungin Shoal, after a small fish that is a local delicacy. The 3-day journey of 2 Philippine Coast Guard vessels and 2 tiny commercial boats to 2nd Thomas Shoal proceeded in rough seas due to an oncoming typhoon and the seasonal monsoon. A little past dawn on Wednesday, the 2nd day of the mission, the Filipinos were met by a white ship marked China Coast Guard, as well as 2 blue militia vessels with Chinese markings. The Chinese ships were roughly 5 times larger than the 2 Filipino commercial boats that carried supplies that are good for roughly 1 month. This move was met with a stern response from China, warning the U.S. to stay out of what it considers its territorial waters. The world watches anxiously as these 2 superpowers stand on the brink of a potential conflict. So what does this standoff mean for the future of the South China Sea and global geopolitics? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the world holds its breath as these tensions continue to simmer. If you found this video informative, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Stay tuned to Fulgur channel for more updates on this developing story and other critical issues shaping our world. Thank you for joining us today. And until next time, stay informed and stay safe. Don't miss our next video. Subscribe now and check out our previous content.